Your business is individual. It's you. Every single decision that you make is for the benefit of your business, and it cannot be like a template. You're going to make the best decision for your business, for your family, for your lifestyle, the best of your ability.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Liz.
And this is Andressa.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Investor Show. Excited about today's topic, Andressa. We are talking about the pros and cons of the BRRRR method, which is a very popular real estate investing strategy in our world of investing. But we're going to kind of dissect, if you will, right, the pros and the cons in today's market. We always assume everyone knows what BRRRR stands for, Andressa, and I just want to break it down very quickly here for everyone. So B stands for buy, right? You're buying the property, and it's typically a distressed property, right? R, the next R, because then there's 4 R's, right? And it's renovate, rent, refinance, and repeat. So that's what the BRRRR stands for. So let's break it down a little bit. Why is, I'll start with one pro, Andressa, and I'd love to hear your perspective. But there are pros to the BRRRR strategy. It's the kind of classic investing strategy because you're buying something that's undervalued and adding the value to boost, your after repair value. So that's the beauty of the BRRRR. You're buying something undervalued and distressed. So I think that's always one of the biggest advantages to this particular strategy versus buying something that, let's use the word retail, right? I'm going out and buying something at retail. You're buying something on sale. Very simple terms. One of the best ways to, do well in this business. What do you think is another pro, Andressa, you'd say for the BRRRR?
Well, I just want to make a quick comment, right?
Yeah.
Because in our Facebook community, sometimes we see women like, okay, I'm buying this property here and it just need a little like TLC, quick rehab. And I'm thinking about doing the BRRRR strategy. Listen, you're trying to bake a cake with, I don't know, rocks.
That would be an awful cake.
Not possible,
Not
at all to do it. So really thinking the goal here is the refi, right? If we're able to refi it. And I think that it's the beauty of it that you leverage that. For me, one of the biggest ways that I was able to propel my business was through BRRRR. You leverage the refi, you go to the appealing process for the appraisal, if that's the case, and then you take that money and then reinvest, right? But there's a lot of traps that you gotta make sure that you're checking the boxes, and all the B's and the R's, they all check the boxes.
Absolutely. I think that kind of leads into the con, right? Because so many times people underestimate what it's going to cost to renovate, especially if you're newer to this business or you're getting into an older property, right? There's a lot of reasons for underestimating costs, especially now. If you have not done a rehab project and you're thinking materials cost X or you're doing your analysis, you really got to check to see if those costs, between labor and your construction costs are accurate. I think the biggest con right now, as you look at it, is that you're able to refinance and be able to repeat the process and ideally even pull money out due to the interest rates. I remember doing BRRRR projects at like mid 4s, right? Mid 3s. And that's not the case anymore when you're refinancing. So you really need to conservatively estimate and analyze your kind of numbers before you get into these projects with the current and potentially the projected interest rate when you're going to be complete. No one has a crystal ball, but you want to be conservative so then you can refinance and obviously set yourself for success. So I'd say that right now is one of the biggest cons, or something I always like to say, right? Mitigating your risk. Doesn't mean you can't do it, but you really need to be conservative and mitigate your risk. What do you think is another con, Andressa, on your...
Well, I want to piggyback on what you're saying, right? Because in many occasions, you will not be able to refinance. Not going to happen. The numbers won't make sense. So then the question becomes can I hold this property? Cash flowing. I'm not talking about unless you have like money sitting down a pile and you have no better place to put it, and you can go into a deal that's going to cash flow negatively. It's not even in my books. So let's come from a standpoint that you are analyzing the deal, and with the current rate And worst case scenario, you add 1 or 2 points above that.
Yeah.
Let's play worst case scenario, I guess, right? We're guessing game here. Still cash flows. That is a deal, right? Will you be able to pull the money out now? That might not be the possibility. You might be able to pull the money down in 2 years or 3 years or 5 years when the interest rate come down. Yeah. Then the question comes to you, can you hold until that time? How is your pro forma looks like 5 years from now down the road? That's what I'm looking at personally. And to be quite honest, it's more no's than yeses. And I need to be okay with that right now because it's a different game. So if I am loading the property and I'm leaving a lot of cash there, is that the best place for me to park my money to get my return or not? It might or might not be, depending where that cash is coming from.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. I think another thing I really love about the strategy is that you can use, well, a lot of the strategies you can use creative financing. But one of our favorite BRRRR deals was when we used a private lender and equity on the same deal.
Yeah.
And there's so many creative ways to structure, because you have to remember you're buying a distressed property. It's not like every bank is like, I'd love to finance that distressed, non-performing, property, right? You think about from an institutional perspective, they want to see stabilized properties. That's why you're refinancing it with them after you have a renter in and it's stabilized. So the benefit, right, is that you can get into these properties creatively. Usually you have to move quickly. So if you've built up private money partners, whether they're equity partners, right, they're like some type of partnership where you're going in together as active partners together. I'm not talking about syndication or pooling money together. I'm talking about literally just partnerships. And you can also work with a lender, because you got to remember, the beautiful part about the BRRRR strategy is that you are adding the value. So ideally, you're going to have to be able to pull your lender out. Now, there's been times that we were able to, I remember a couple of projects, we converted a lender to an equity partner because we weren't able to pull all the money out due to the refinance, due to the, the budgeting of the construction. So again, creativity, right? You work with private money partners, whether it's a lender or an equity partner, you can get creative with them. So
I think
keep that
there's
in
a
mind.
lot of people that are going to be doing this right now.
Absolutely.
Because you're not going to be able to refi and get your lender out. And that is eating you a leg and an arm, right? So talk a little bit more about that conversation, Liz, about converting, because it's not for everybody.
Yeah. And I would say the biggest tip is that the converting or the conversation actually doesn't happen first when you're in a bind or the plan isn't kind of working the way it should be. The conversation actually starts when you really are at the very beginning of the project. As an investor, you need to be able to know that there's a plan A, there's a plan B, there's a plan C, and even there's plan D that we don't want to go down the path. That's your job as the investor. You may not be able to control the contractor and control every single piece of the puzzle, but you as the orchestrator of the deal have to know what the risks are and what could happen, like, right, worst case scenario. So the conversations you want to have with your private money partners when the project begins, or even before that, when you're, connecting with them, is, what their long-term goals are. You also need to know, like, almost like have a litmus test of, are you, would you be open to this scenario, that scenario? I mean, if they're a hell no, if in keeping into the project long-term because their child is graduating from college next year and they really need that 100K back. Well, you need to set yourself up and that person up for success. That's your job. That's your job in running the project. So remember those conversations, like the coming to Jesus meeting, right? Andressa, actually shouldn't happen in the middle of the project. All those things proactively can happen at the beginning before you even take someone's money and have somebody invest with you, because you really need to be able to mitigate risk at that point and know, okay, what are my options? That's being a good steward, right, of private money. And those are the conversations we always had with our private money lenders and partners.
And please, investors, if you're listening to this episode about the BRRRR strategy and how you're able to think creatively when you're not able to refinance, have those conversations prior and add those conversations, transfer those conversations from verbal or emails to the contract. because then you're on the same page. Don't
Correct.
assume that, oh, that's what we talked about. People won't remember that. So your contract is extremely, extremely important. And let's say if you haven't had that conversation, but that's the situation that you are having it right now. Well, add an addendum to the contract, have a conversation with your lender. And worst case scenario, you got to run the numbers and say, okay, can I hold this property that is bleeding, or it's time for me to sell at this moment and stop the bleeding? Otherwise, my business will be affected. That is a conversation that you have to have first with yourself, with your partner, and think about the business as an entity. What does the business need right now, considering the economy the way that it is? Every single deal, every single business, your business is individual, right? It's you. So every single decision that you make is for the benefit of your business, and it cannot be like a template. You're going to make the best decision for your business, for your family, for your lifestyle, the best of your ability. But having those conversations right now instead of like pushing, because it's not going to get better next week.
No, it's only going to get worse, right? Lack of communication will kill a project and kill a relationship. Bottom line. So you need to keep communicating. And the best thing is more face-to-face or Zoom, especially if you're having a difficult conversation. Don't like text the person, don't message them. Like, have a real conversation. They're real people and your partners in the project, whether it's going well or not. So, but the BRRRR strategy is one of my favorites. I know it's one of yours, Andressa. I think people could do well right now. Just make sure you're smart with the buying. Make sure you're buying right and not overpaying would be my biggest suggestion.
And for me, it will be, listen, you can use the same numbers that you used in the past and get frustrated that the numbers are not working out. You need to recalibrate your expectations about the BRRRR strategies and look at a longer term if you were to hold it. You can't just think that you're going to refine the next 3 months. That was my thing, right? I will refine in 3, 4, of the latest 5 months. That became 5 years in my book. That's how I run stress tests. So what is yours? Go to our Facebook community and share what's coming up for you. If you are in a sticky situation with your BRRRR, share with us so we can support you. Thanks so much for listening.